Thank you for watching. Subscribe on Deceived Husbands for more stories. Sarah and I had been married for 15 years. We were sweethearts since we were 12. I wasn't interested in college, so I got an entry-level job at Turner Engineering as a draftsman right out of high school. Sarah and I got married a year later, and the next year we were proud parents of twin boys, Jake and Liam. Things were rough for the first few years, but we watched our pennies and everything seemed to work out. I was still a draftsman, but at a higher grade than when I started. The money was better, but still tight. We managed to save enough to buy a small house and had 2 good cars. They weren't new, but they weren't junky either. Sarah always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, so she never worked. We didn't need the extra money, so that was fine with me. We were both healthy and in good shape. Sarah was a little heavier than when we married, but not much. She was just over 5 tall and had dark brown hair with bangs. She looked like a smaller version of Linda Ronstadt. I hadn't changed at all. I played right tackle on the high school football team, so I wasn't small, but I wasn't flabby either. Tom Jackson moved to Lincoln from Monroe about a year ago and got a job at Turner Engineering as a surveyor. Tom and I used to play football against each other, and we became immediate friends. He married his high school sweetheart, a redhead named Laura. Laura and Sarah became instant friends. They didn't have any children yet, but were perfect babysitters when we weren't at work. Tom and I enjoyed each other's company. It was a pleasant break away from the wives. Of course, Sarah and Laura were doing the same thing. They would shop together and go to parties and club meetings while Tom and I watched the boys and the TV. Laura also got a job as a secretary at Parker Engineering just outside of town. I started noticing things about 8 months ago. There used to be one PTA meeting every month, and now there was one every week. Laura didn't have any kids, but always went to the meetings with Sarah. The frequency of Tupperware and Magic Chef parties seemed to increase monthly, but they never bought anything. They joined a book club, but never seemed to find time to read. On the weekends they would go shopping for hours, but buy very little. Sarah's collection of fancy underwear seemed to be growing, but I never got to enjoy any. It started to eat at me. I never mentioned anything to Tom because he seemed oblivious to it. I didn't want to cause trouble if there was nothing going on. One evening, about an hour after I put the boys to bed, Sarah came home from a basket party of some sort. She took a shower before Laura picked her up, and as soon as she got home, she took another one. That seemed odd to me. While she was in the shower, I did a quick hamper check and found a set of black lace underwear. Now, who would wear black lace underwear to a basket party? I'm not in the habit of checking my wife's panties, but I did tonight and found the crotch to be damp and sticky. I put them in my pocket. I've never gone through my wife's purse or wallet until tonight. The only thing I was really interested in was her cell phone. Apparently, she felt pretty certain that I wouldn't be snooping because she hadn't deleted any calls for the last week. Most of the calls were to Laura, but a large number of incoming and outgoing calls were to KC, KH, and KW. Of course, I had no idea who they were, but I quickly deduced that C stood for cell, H stood for home, and W probably stood for work. I checked her address book, and Laura also had 3 numbers listed: Laura C, Laura H, and Laura W. I was amazed at how well organized my wife had her phone. I looked at Laura's work number and noticed it had an extension. I looked at the number for KW, and it was the same number as the one for Laura, but with a different extension. It wasn't hard to figure out that Sarah had been calling and getting calls from someone who worked with Laura. It also wasn't hard to figure out that Laura must have been the one that introduced Sarah to the mysterious K. Parker Engineering was closed right now, so I took Sarah's phone and called the KW number. "Hello, you have reached the desk of Ken Sanders. I'm not at my desk right now, but if you leave your name and number, I'll get back to you as soon as I can." I hung up right after the beep. That was far too easy. "John, are you coming to bed?" Sarah just poked her head around the doorway. "I'm near the end of this book. I'll be up as soon as I finish it if I don't fall asleep on the couch." Of course, I had every intention of sleeping on the couch. It was a restless night. I kept trying to figure out what I had done wrong or what I could have done differently. It was a terrible waste of time and mental effort. Every time I redirected my thoughts to what I should be doing, they kept going back to what I should have done. I kept looking at the clock, and it wasn't moving. All I knew for sure is that I was not going to accept any guilt for what happened or what was going to happen. I awoke to the sounds of my two little angels getting their breakfast. Sarah encouraged them to take care of themselves rather than be waited on. It was a good idea and seemed to work. I stretched and scratched as my wife entered the room. "You better hurry, John, or you'll be late for work." "No problem. I'm not going to work today." "Why? You never miss work. Too many personal problems." I yawned and staggered towards the bathroom. I needed a shower. Sarah looked a little perplexed. When I got back, the boys had already left for school. I got a cup of coffee and sat across the table from my wife. Reluctantly, she looked up at me as if anticipating something but not knowing what. "Tell me about your affair." I didn't feel like beating around the bush, but I pretty much knew she wasn't just going to open up and bare her soul. "Get serious, John. Is this why you've been moping around? Do you really think I'm cheating on you?" "Yes, now tell me about your affair. We've been married for 15 years, John. Why would you even think such a thing?" "Sarah, I have things to do today, and I have no intention of sitting here playing games with you." "I'll ask you one more time. Tell me about your affair." My loving wife let out an exasperated sigh and leaned towards me. "John, it's all in your head. There is no affair." "Well, I'd like to thank you for your honesty, but I can't now, can I?" She leaned back in her chair and sipped her coffee as if she had taken control of the situation. "Can you answer a few easy questions for me?" "Yes, John, of course. What would you like to know? Why do you go to PTA meetings every week when the secretary of the PTA says they only have monthly meetings, and you haven't been to any for 6 months?" "I'm not sure what you're talking about." She was a little less confident now. "You and Laura go to non-existent PTA meetings every Tuesday. Now, why would you lie about something like that?" Sarah struggled with the question for a moment and then came up with an answer. "I'm truly sorry, John. Tuesday is ladies' night at Rosie's Cantina, and Laura and I have been going for the 2 Ferrone margaritas. We didn't want you and Tom to think we were messing around, so we didn't tell you. It was a mistake, and I'm sorry. From now on, we'll tell you." "Nice try, Sarah." "You know, of course, I'll be checking that out. I'm sure Laura will back you up, but how about the people at Rosie's?" "John, you're making more out of this than it is. When you go out to your little Tupperware parties and such, why do you take a shower before you go and another one when you come home?" She took her time again. "A lot of the women smoke at those parties. When I get home, I want to get the smell out of my hair." "It's not a big deal, John. Why do you wear fancy underwear to go to these parties? You never wear the sexy stuff for me except when it's a special night. Every evening you spend with these housewives, you wear your best. Why?" "I don't have a good answer for that. I just want to feel dressed up when I go out sometimes." I was starting to get the shits about her lies. It was time to end it. I was mad, and it was difficult to control. "These are the panties you wore last night." I tossed them on the table. "The crotch was damp when you came home and covered with something sticky. I know what the hell juice is, and I know it isn't mine. Don't you try and tell me you have a yeast infection, or I swear it'll hit you." Sarah was squirming in her chair at this point. She was trying not to look at me. No quick answer seemed to be coming. "Damn it, Sarah, why did you come home wearing juice-stained panties last night?" "I want an answer." "Stop it, John. Just stop it. I can't take any more of this. We've been married for 15 years. How can you treat me this way?" The steady stream of lies and constant denial finally got to me. With all the force I could muster, I heaved my half-filled coffee cup across the room, shattering the front of the microwave oven. There was no doubt this time that I got Sarah's attention. I had never seen that expression on her face before because she had never seen me mad before. Leaning across the table, I looked directly at her and spoke louder than I had before. "Who the hell is Ken Sanders?" She pushed herself out of the chair and backed up to the sink, trying to get away from me. "For the last goddamn time, who the hell is Ken Sanders? A friend, just a friend." She was scared to death as the words came out of her mouth. "Did you have sex with him?" "Yes. Yes, I had sex with him. Did you have sex with him last night? Yes, yes, I did. Stop this, John. Please stop this. I'm sorry. Just stop, please. She was standing by the sink, bawling like crazy. I got a cup from the cabinet and poured myself a fresh coffee. As I started to sit down, Sarah's cell phone rang. Her eyes darted from me to the phone and back to me. It's from Ken. I think we'd better answer it. I pushed the speaker option and answered the call. Good morning, sweetheart. I just got to work and saw that you tried to call me at my work number last night. Did you leave something at the house? Sarah, or should I say sweetheart, seemed mortified. There was a moment of silence. Sarah, are you there? Is something wrong? She looked at me with a petrified expression. I nodded at her to answer. Ken, she hesitated. Ken, my husband is here. He knows about us. He has the phone on speaker. He didn't hang up, but he didn't answer either. I felt obligated to let him off the hook. Ken, good buddy, I have a few things that I have to do this morning, but I promise to come see you this afternoon. Maybe you should put 911 on your speed dial. I ended the call and put the phone back in my pocket. Sarah just stood by the sink in her bathrobe, shaking. I have to go now. I have one more question. What is the name of the guy that Laura is seeing? John, no, please don't make me. The second cup flew across the room and smashed into the tile wall behind the sink. She jumped back and couldn't talk fast enough. Calvin Brooks, I'll be back this afternoon. Have all of your things moved out before then. My mother will stay with the boys until we can make other arrangements. Anything that you can't get into your car, I'll deliver for you. Let my mother know where you'll be. Don't call me. She didn't move or say another thing as I walked out the door. Of course, I had no idea what to do next. I decided to go by the office and see Tom. I thought of him as a friend and felt that he should know what was going on. It was pretty easy to figure out that Laura met Calvin at work and got to be friends with him. Ken was probably a friend of Calvin's who needed a date. Maybe I was oversimplifying it a little, but I felt it was close enough. Tom wasn't in the office. He was out at a site setting some stakes or something like that. I called him on his cell. Tom, I hate to bother you, but I have bad news. Is somebody hurt? Not yet, but they're going to be. What the hell are you talking about, John? Sarah and Laura have gotten themselves a couple of boyfriends. On all those nights that they were supposed to be going to meetings and Tupperware parties, they were really getting together with them. Are you sure? I don't believe you, John. It sounds like some kind of joke to me. Ask Laura about a guy named Calvin Brooks. He works at Parker with her. I think she introduced Sarah to another guy from there also. Are you sure? Damn it, John. I know Calvin Brooks. We were in the same graduating class. How about a guy named Ken Sanders? Yeah, him too. Tall, skinny fellow. John, I figure that Sarah is going to give Laura a heads up as soon as she can. Sarah gave me a whole line of crap this morning before I pinned her down. I'm sure you'll get the same runaround from Laura. Tom hung up the phone, and I went to personnel to request a short vacation. I didn't feel like working right now. It only took 10 minutes to shift the work that I had ongoing to another draftsman. About that time, Sarah's cell phone rang. Caller ID showed that it was Laura. Sarah, what the hell is going on? I just got a call from Tom. He's coming to the office. I think somebody told him something. I didn't answer her. Sarah, are you there? This is not a good time to be playing games. Hi, Laura. This is John. I had to borrow Sarah's cell phone this morning. Mine was dead. What are you talking about, John? What exactly did somebody tell Tom? I couldn't help myself. I felt mean and nasty at that moment. I'm sorry, Laura. I thought I was calling Sarah. I'll try and get her at home. I don't think you should bother her right now. She's really busy getting all her stuff packed. She doesn't have time to chat. What do you mean by getting her stuff packed? She's going to be moving back in with her parents for a while. The pause at the other end of the line was hilarious. I was smiling as I imagined all the scenarios that were going through Laura's head. I think it might be more important for you to tell Calvin that Tom is on the way over. He could probably use the head start. Oh, God, no. This can't be happening. No. She hung up on me. The nerve of that woman. We only had one credit card, so canceling it was no problem. We also had an ATM debit card. It took me 5 minutes to change the PIN number. I had no idea what to do with the checking account, so I just ignored it for now. I needed it to pay the utilities and other bills anyhow. I was just hoping that Sarah didn't take any checks with her. The cell phone rang again, but this time it was mine. Tom had chased Calvin Brooks out of the Parker building and caught him in the parking lot. He was in jail and wanted me to tell his brother in Monroe to come up and post bail for him. I called his brother. There was nothing else I could do for Tom, so I went to Taco Bell. After lunch, I stopped by to see my mom and dad. I explained everything to them. Mom was more than willing to watch the boys for a while. During the week, she would stay at my place, and on the weekends, the twins would stay with them. Now it was time to visit Ken Sanders. The guys in the drafting department at Parker couldn't wait to tell me about Tom's visit that morning. The drafting department overlooks the parking lot, and they saw all the action. Tom caught Calvin before he could reach his BMW. He threw him over the hood of one of the cars and began smashing his face. The security guards followed them out and tried to pull Tom off with no success. Finally, one of them hit Tom in the neck with a taser. He was still out when they stuck him in the police car. They had to haul Calvin away in an EMT vehicle. One of the guys showed me the cubicle where Ken Sanders worked. It was empty. Seems like old Ken suddenly quit this morning. We went by Laura's desk, and she was not there either, but it looked as if she still worked there. 10 minutes later, I had Ken's home address, and I was headed for the parking lot. It was a small ranch house with no garage. There was a white Lexus in the driveway with the trunk and back doors open. As I walked up to the door, Ken Sanders was coming out with an armload of clothing. He dropped everything and rushed back into the house as soon as he saw me. I ran after him but stumbled over the stuff he dropped and managed to see him going out the back as I entered. I had to laugh at his reaction. Hell, I wasn't like Tom. I was a nice guy. It looked like the type of place that was rented fully furnished. That's why he didn't have a truck. In another 10 minutes, he would have been done and out of town. I was looking forward to having a chat with Ken, but didn't feel like chasing him to do it. I looked around the room for anything interesting and got a few nice surprises. The first thing I picked up was his cell phone. It was on a desk in the living room beside a folder containing his passport and some personal papers. On the dining room table was a nice little laptop computer. I couldn't find anything else, so I gathered up the few goodies that I had and left. I didn't want to do anything that could be considered criminal, so I resisted the impulse to trash his car. It was beautiful. I imagined that taking items from the house was a crime, but hell, he left the door open, and anybody could have picked them up. Unable to fully control myself, I let the air out of just one of his tires. He would have to empty the trunk to get to the spare, and I'm sure he would be doing it with one eye on the street looking for me. I'll get him later. He got the message. I swung by the jail to see Tom. His brother was there, and they were busy doing legal stuff, so I just waved at him and smiled. It looked like he had everything under control. Mom was already at the house and had supper started. We chatted a little, and then I took the stuff I picked up at Ken's into the den where I kept my computer and stuff. Before I could get a look at anything, Jake and Liam got home from school. I decided it would be better to tell them what was going on before they asked. I didn't get the chance. "Hi, Dad, what's Nana doing here? Where is Mom?" Jake beat me to the punch. "Your mom and I have decided to take a little break from each other. Shelby's staying at her parents' place for a while." Liam started smiling, and Jake rolled his eyes and moaned. I win, I told you so." Liam was gloating about something, and his brother was frowning. "What's going on? What is so funny?" Liam volunteered to explain. "Jake and I had a bet. I said that Mom was cheating on you, and he said it would never happen. It looks like I won. I never said anything about your mother cheating. We are not stupid, Dad, and don't treat us like children. We know what is going on. I just didn't want to admit it. Liam is right, Mom is cheating on you. How did you know this?" "I just found out. You are a little slow, Dad, and a little too trusting." Liam put his arm around my shoulder. It felt odd, a 13-year-old boy trying to comfort his father. One Saturday, when Mom and Laura said that they were going shopping at King of Prussia, Mom wouldn't let Jake and me go along. She said it was a grown-up shopping day, and she would make it up to us later. When we got to school on Monday, A couple of the kids said they saw her with a guy at Noble's Grove. We called them liars, but one of the girls had a cell phone picture. It seemed pretty cut and dry. I thought there must be an explanation, but Jake said she was cheating. Why didn't you say something to me? They both just shrugged. A couple of weeks later, Tracy Mercer's parents saw Laura, Mom, and two guys at TGI Fridays in Allentown. They told Tracy about it when they got home. I sat there dumbfounded. Thank goodness Nana called us for supper. We didn't discuss the problem during dinner, and I excused myself before dessert came. Fortunately, the boys decided to drop the subject for the rest of the night. I was relieved. I just started to look through Ken's laptop when his cell phone rang. It was a text message, DK for Snafulik Dirk. Sorry for the problems, love Sarah. I am not the world's greatest at text messaging. In fact, I am pretty bad. But I had no trouble reading this one. It came from Laura's cell phone, which meant that Laura and Sarah were together. I couldn't resist the temptation. TJ, thanks a lot, John. Now she knew that I had Ken's cell phone. I spent the next couple of hours looking through files and folders on Ken's computer. There were no emails between Sarah and Ken, but there were a few between Ken and some old friends in Somerset that were interesting. I was astonished by what I read and definitely did not like it. Sarah and I had been together almost our whole life, and now I found out that I never really knew her. She seemed to have bonded better with Ken in less than a year than she did with me in almost 20. While I was replacing the printer cartridge, I noticed that I was crying. That is not something that I normally do. She hurt me with her cheating, and now I felt salt in the wounds. Maybe it was from my tears. I printed out several emails and a dozen pictures. I would have done more photos, but I ran out of the expensive paper. There were no pornographic pictures or even anything racy. They were all fit for mixed company. Jake stuck his nose in the door and asked if he could call his mother. I didn't feel that I could refuse. My mother was with the boys while they talked to Sarah and overheard everything. She wasn't eavesdropping, but it appeared that the boys weren't trying to hide anything. Mom told me later that they did not cut Sarah any slack and blamed the entire problem on her. The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes. The emails were extremely interesting. Ken had applied for and was hired as an engineer for an alternative power project in Spain. His starting date was in 8 weeks. Apparently, he had not given notice at Parker that he was leaving. I'm sure that Laura knew, but nobody else there mentioned it. He had all the papers ready for the trip, except I had his passport. I'm sure he could get a replacement, but he better hurry if he wanted to make his start date. I guess he could always go to the police and report that I pilfered it, but I didn't think he would do that. He hadn't made any plane reservations yet. One of the emails to a close friend explained a lot of things. Sarah was planning on getting a divorce after she joined Ken in Spain. She realized that I would never allow her to take the boys out of the country, so she was going to have me declared an unfit father. The letter didn't go into a lot of detail as to how she was going to accomplish this, but indicated that it would be severe enough to deny visitation rights with the twins or custody. Now that was downright mean. Ken was the one writing this letter, so it was all hearsay. I would have liked to have something original from Sarah describing it, but I had to make do with what I had. I printed out several copies of this letter. Mom was falling asleep watching Lino, so I sent her up to her bedroom. The boys were already in bed. I fell asleep on the couch with 4 empty beer bottles on the coffee table. I woke up to the smell of fresh coffee and bacon. Mom always put out a good breakfast. The boys were finishing their cereal when I made it to the table. I had to endure a few good-natured digs before I could get started on my eggs. The conversation was light until it was time for the bus. Boys, I'm afraid that your mother is going to try and separate us. She is planning on having me identified as an unfit parent so that she can have you all to herself. I have no problem with shared custody if that will make the two of you happy, but I will not give up my right to see you and be with you. I don't want you to have to take sides, but I want you to know what is going on. Be careful and don't listen to any lies. Dad, we are smarter than you think. Don't worry about anything. We love Mom, but we are not going to let her screw you or us. Liam was smiling, and Jake gave me a thumbs up as they walked out the door. Mom filled my cup and sat down with one of her own. Relax, John. Everybody is on your side. After showering and shaving, I put on some clothes that were a little better than I normally wear. I felt a little odd when I left the house because I had 3 cell phones with me. I made a mental note to get a charger for the cell phone that I got from Ken. I probably wouldn't need it, but I'd rather be prepared. I signed in at the Family Services office and waited for a caseworker to call me. I was embarrassed when I finally got called because I happened to know the lady that came out to help me. John Richards, I haven't seen you in over 10 years. What have you been up to? Jody Mitchell was easy to remember in high school. She was one of the goth girls. The goths had their own little group and stuck together. They were ostracized by most of the other kids, especially the jocks, including me. She looked normal now, but all I will always remember her by is her pink-streaked hair, black lipstick, and dark eye makeup. The funny thing about the goths is that you could never tell if they were into drugs, sexual deviations, or witchcraft. As far as Jody was concerned, it was probably none of those, but you always believed the most outrageous. The nameplate on her desk read J. Mitchell, so I assume she never married. 12 years ago I could understand that, but today she looked great. John, what can I do for you? My train of thought was broken by her question. I found myself stammering a little. You look great, Jody. She laughed at my awkwardness. Do you mean compared to what I used to look like? Now I was embarrassed. I guess, but I didn't mean to imply anything. Relax, John. I was halfway through college when I realized I was smart enough to face the world as who I was without the fake facade. I have been in what you would call normal for almost 10 years. I'm a lot more comfortable with normal than before. Damn it, but that sounds patronizing. I have a hard time keeping my foot out of my mouth. You'll have to excuse me. Forget it. Now, why are you here? Before we start, I need to ask you a question. Do you have a file or report on me? Anything at all? Her fingers danced across the keys like a piano player. Nothing here, John. You did marry Sarah Watson, is that correct? Yes. Nothing under her name either. It looks like the 2 of you are feeding your kids and not beating them. You do have kids, right? Yeah. We have 13-year-old twin boys, Jake and Liam. Okay. Now can we get down to the problem that brought you here? Jody, this is a little far-fetched, and I know it might seem hard to believe, but my wife is planning on leaving me and wants to take the boys with her. It's not hard to believe, John. We see it all the time. Doesn't she have to have cause to do something like that? Usually, when the mother comes to us, she has documentation or something to prove the accusation. You just checked, and there's nothing there now, right? That's right, John. But how do I know you're not setting me up because you did something, and she hasn't got around to reporting it yet? Maybe she is getting medical information or police reports before she comes to our office. Just because we aren't showing anything in our computer doesn't mean you didn't do anything. What you're saying is that I can't win. No, I'm not saying that. Why do you think she is going to do something like this? I had no intention of showing anyone the email that Ken had sent, but now I felt that I had no choice. I had to ask myself why I made the copies if I wasn't intending on giving them to anybody. I slid one across the desk to Jody. Where did you get this? I took it off a computer that I obtained illegally. I know it can't be used for any legal reason, but it is some sort of proof of what is going on. The word conspiracy comes to mind, but I don't know the legal definition of it. I wanted to talk to you or somebody in this office because I didn't know what to do. I don't know how to protect myself and my sons from something like this, and I can't afford a lawyer. Jody Mitchell relaxed back into her chair. I watched her and did not blink. She rocked back and forth a few times and leaned towards me. Can you come back tomorrow morning? Yes, fine. I'll see you then. Can I keep this copy of the email? I nodded yes and turned to walk out the door. It was nice to see you, John. I smiled and she smiled back. I forgot the goth girl and saw the new Jody. I didn't know any lawyers and I didn't know any people who knew lawyers, so I had to pick one out of the telephone book. I knew that she was planning on divorcing me, but under the circumstances, things could change. I didn't want to take that chance. I wasn't sure what our financial picture would look like in the next few days or weeks, so I got the lawyer to quote me a price for the whole package up front and I paid it in cash. I told him to do it the quickest and easiest way he knew. If she wanted the house, she could have it. With the property depreciation, it was worth less than the mortgage. The other thing I insisted on was joint custody of the twins at a minimum. I would take full custody if he could swing it. I would pay child support, but no alimony. On the way to lunch, I got a call from Tom. He needed a place to stay, and of course, I offered to put him up. We met at Taco Bell for the gourmet lunch combo. He had a silly grin on his face when I walked up. I know you can't be that happy. What happened? A friend of mine who works at Community General Hospital gave me a little update on Calvin. Laura went over there to visit with him. While she was there, Calvin's wife walked in with her 2 kids. Laura had no idea that she was being played. It got so messy that the hospital security people had to escort Laura out. I went by Parker to talk to her, and she was no longer there. She had quit. I guess she must be at home right now, but I'm not sure. Why wasn't his wife living up here with him? I don't know. Why wasn't he going home to his wife and kids on the weekends? Don't know that either. To be honest with you, I don't give a damn. Tom took a week off from work so he could get things straightened out. I didn't know where he was going to sleep since my mom was staying at the house also, but we decided we would figure something out. He was going to swing by his place to try and pick up some clothing and his personal stuff just in case Laura was not there. He decided he didn't want to talk to her after all. I was headed for my insurance agent, but I never made it because the cell phone rang again. John, it's David Watson. Can you come over to the house for a while so we can try and sort things out? Sarah is a wreck and her mother isn't helping. Who is going to be there? The 3 of us and Sarah's sister, Katie. I'm not sure what you hope to accomplish, but I'll be there in about 20 minutes. It was a somber group. I took my folder of goodies in with me and I declined the coffee. Who wants to start? John, Sarah seems to think that you were overreacting a little. She claims that you were raging mad and forced her to say things that were not true in order to calm you down. She claims that she did nothing wrong and you have no right to throw her out. I got the distinct impression that my dear wife had related a very sanitized version of what happened to her parents. I can understand why she would not want to admit her infidelity to them, but resented the fact that she shifted the blame to me. What do you want me to do, David? Prove that she is a liar or admit that I made a mistake? I would just like to see a few facts so we can understand things a little better. What did she tell you about her boyfriend? She claims that she didn't have a boyfriend. She just had a few drinks with some friends that Laura worked with, and that you misinterpreted it. David, in the last month, she had over 80 telephone conversations with this casual friend. How many times did she call you and her mother in the last month? They both looked over at Sarah. She looked at her feet instead of at them. Does that sound like a casual friend that she meets occasionally for drinks? No one was speaking as I took out Ken's cell phone. Katie, can you read text messages? This is one that was sent to her casual friend right after I threw her out. Why don't you read it to everyone? Dear Ken, sorry for the problems. Love, Sarah. Katie handed the phone back to me. Does that sound like a casual friend? Sarah had her hands in front of her face. David was slowly shaking his head. A couple of weeks ago, Sarah and her friend Laura told everyone they were going shopping at the King of Prussia Mall. The twins begged to go along, but their mother said no. Here are a few pictures that were taken on that trip. I handed David 6 photos, which he looked at and passed to Katie and David. That doesn't look like King of Prussia. That looks like Noble's Grove. Damn it, Sarah, what is going on? Martha had been quiet up to that point. Sarah, in every picture, you were hanging onto this man's arm for dear life. That's not what you do with friends. It appears that the fellow in these pictures, Ken, I assume, is far more than a friend. What were you trying to pull here? The tears were flowing slowly and quietly. This was not what she was hoping for. She wasn't expecting the pictures. Here are a few more of the same. I think 2 of them are from Olive Garden, and 1 looks like Red Lobster. I have several more. Fortunately, my loving wife has her clothing on in all of them. I think we have seen enough, John. I'm sorry that we had to call you over here for this. David seemed upset over the way he was deceived. As I got up, Sarah was leaving the room bawling like a baby. We never got to discuss the stains on her underwear. I guess at that point it was not necessary. David walked me to the door. "John, I am sorry that we can't undo what has been done, but I guarantee you that it will not be ignored." He shook my hand as I left. Mom and Tom had a rollaway bed set up in the den when I got home. It wasn't actually a den, just a small extra room that I kept the computer in. Tom had a pile of extra clothes that he got from his house stacked up in the corner. Laura wasn't at home when he stopped by. The most interesting thing waiting for me when I got home was the mail. Actually, it wasn't waiting for me, it was for Sarah. A nice official envelope from the passport department. I knew that I was not supposed to open it, but I couldn't help myself. It was, of course, a passport, but more exactly it was a family passport. The picture was of Sarah and the two boys. I remembered when the boys told me that they had a picture taken, but I never imagined it was for this purpose. Of course, there was no passport for me in the envelope. I immediately called David and told him to tell Sarah that it had arrived. If she wanted her passport, all she had to do was send Ken to the house to pick it up. I would only give it to Ken. Normally, I would have been at work when the mail arrived. I never would have known she got it. David informed me that they asked Sarah to find someplace else to stay. They had no idea where she was going to go. It appeared that they were slightly pissed at their daughter. He did promise to tell her about the passport. The supper conversation was interesting, and it mostly involved the boys. "A lady from Family Services came to see us at school today," Jake said with a coy little smile. "Would you like to expand on that a little? Did she speak to you together or separately? Both of us at one time." "Her name was Jody. She said the two of you went to high school together. We went to the same high school at the same time, but we weren't together." I got a frown from Liam for being a smartass. "Pay attention, Dad. What did she want to talk to you about?" "You. All she talked about was you. Jake and I both agreed that she liked you." "You got that from a short conversation?" "She talked to us for over an hour. We missed gym and part of geography. They were both talking at the same time, and I was having trouble keeping up. Dinner was interrupted by a phone call from Katie. She wanted to talk. I met Sarah's sister at McDonald's. We took a corner table with 2 very hot coffees. John, Sarah asked me to try and explain what was going on. She couldn't do it herself. This might sound stupid, but if I have any questions, how will you answer them? I don't think I can. All I can do is talk and have you listen. I am sure I will get some of it screwed up anyhow because most of it sounded like gibberish when she told it to me. You are setting me up so that you can tell me that you have no answers, just excuses and justifications. I always knew you were smart, John. Let's get it over with. I have other things to do." First, she blames it all on Laura. Laura started cheating on Tom and made it sound exciting and romantic. Sarah said she never had experienced exciting and romantic. All she ever had was you, loving and dependable. When Ken Sanders started at Parker, Laura convinced Sarah to join them for drinks and a few meals out. While they were together, Laura and Calvin would often disappear for a little lovemaking and leave Sarah and Ken alone. Eventually, they started messing around also, and before long, it was a full-blown affair. Once it started, she couldn't or didn't want to stop it. Ken had impressed her with his stories of what he did and what he was going to do. She wanted to go with him and share it all. When he asked her to go to Spain, she jumped on it. The big problem was not leaving you, but leaving the boys. She knew that you would never let her take them overseas, so she was going to figure out a way to make you look like a bad father. She knows now that it was a mistake. After talking to the boys, she realized that they were closer to you than they were to her. She decided that she would not attempt to take the twins if you agreed to a divorce with no strings attached. Tom told me that Laura had gone back to her parents' house near Medina, so he was moving back into his place just until he could sell it or rent it out. He spent the morning at the bank, insurance company, and lawyer's office. He wanted to try and get some money out of Parker, but they had no company policy against fraternization. His lawyer said it would be an uphill battle. He went by the hospital and found out that Calvin was being released. His wife was taking care of the discharge paperwork when she saw Tom. Before he could get away, she cornered him and carefully explained that she was trying to get Calvin to drop the charges against him. He was really surprised when she thanked him for all his help. Apparently, she had been trying to straighten out Calvin for several years with no success. After Tom took off, I just sat on the front porch and drank beer. Mom brought me out a meatloaf sandwich and sat with me for a while. She didn't say anything, but she did have a beer. She said Dad was coming over for supper and would be staying the night. When Jody Mitchell pulled up, Mom went into the house. Jody sat beside me but refused the cold beer I offered. We sat for a few seconds before she spoke. I served the papers on Sarah about an hour ago. She was one pissed-off woman. She is staying with her sister, by the way. I finished the long neck that I had in my hand. I guess that is a good thing, but why do I feel so bad? There is no good thing in cases like this, John, just less bad. I took out another beer, paused, and then put it back in the cooler. Could you stop by and explain all this to the boys? I get along pretty well with them, but no matter how carefully I word things, it will sound like I am dumping on their mother. I'm afraid if I do that, I will alienate them in some way. I don't want to do that. How about 7 tonight? I nodded as she got up and walked to her car. She stopped halfway and looked back. That was a good sign, and I smiled. She smiled back. Jody came by that night and spent a long time with Jake and Liam. Tom and I were busy going through his house and cleaning out everything that was Laura's, or that reminded him of Laura. Jody started to come over to the house several times a week. Pretty soon, she was spending as much time with my mom as she was with the boys. I noticed that she was ignoring me. I was comfortable with that, but curious. One night after the boys went to bed, she sat down beside me. I felt that I had to talk to her. I didn't get the chance. She spoke first. John, do you have any wine? Well, sort of. My conversation skills still needed work. What do you mean by sort of? I don't have anything with a cork in it. I have wine, but it all has screw tops. She seemed to think that was funny. Give me something red, will you? And bring the bottle. Well, the bottle was more like a jug, but she didn't seem to mind. I poured and we sipped. I finally forced myself to break the ice. I guess the boys are getting a lot from your visits. How long are you going to have to see them? Oh, the twins are fine. They don't need to see me. I come over here to see you. I don't understand. You hardly even talk to me when you are here. I figured that was what you wanted. Not really. I was just afraid that you had some sort of rules against fraternizing with customers. Her soft laugh made me feel more comfortable. I'm amazed that you haven't even asked to see my tattoo. Tattoos? What tattoos? It was evident that she was trying to draw me into some sort of frivolous conversation to try and loosen me up. It was a good plan, and I appreciated it. I have 4 of them that I got when I was still in high school. 3 are easy to find, but one of them is more difficult. Are you going to show them to me, or do I have to look for them? It's more fun if you look, but I'll need a little bit more wine if you are going to do that. We both laughed when I filled her glass to the brim. The hunt was far more exciting because we had to keep quiet so that we wouldn't wake the boys. The 4th one was indeed in a very private place, and I ended up admiring it for a long time before she pushed me away. She left before the twins got out of bed, but I had the funny feeling that they knew what happened. I told my telephone book lawyer to finish up the divorce papers and have them delivered. Sarah was going to have to live with what I offered or do it herself. She was still staying with Katie when the papers were served. There was no response, and I did not even get a phone call. Several more weeks passed. Things were not going well with my dad. Mom was spending more time there than at my place. Luckily, school was just finishing for the year, so the boys moved in with her for the summer. By the end of the summer, Dad had been moved to an assisted living facility. Tom and I helped Mom get the family house ready to sell, and Mom moved back in with me. Jody had been visiting the boys at Mom's place all summer and spending 3 or 4 nights a week with me. They went on shopping trips and out to eat together, and I was happy for the attention that Jake and Liam were getting. At least I wasn't jealous of them anymore. I was pretty sure they knew what was going on between Jody and me. Sarah called the boys about once a week, but the conversations were always short and, according to Mom, seemed stressed most of the time. The twins didn't even tell me that she called. Tom's divorce from Laura was finalized. I had no idea what the status of mine was. He had also decided that he wanted to start his own surveying business and asked me to go in with him. I was a little short on cash to contribute until Mom came to the rescue. When she and Dad ran out of money, Medicare would take over his expenses. Rather than watch it all dwindle away, she felt that I should use it for the business. I believe that she was also thinking of it as an investment in her future. 3 months later, Tom and I had our own little survey business. Luckily, my drafting skills converted over to drawing plots. About a week after school started for the new semester, the twins got a visit from their mother. They thought they were going to the guidance office to see Jody, and were both disappointed to see Sarah. They tried their best to be polite and respectful to her, but it still didn't go well. She told them that she loved them both and was sorry that things worked out the way they did. She was going to Spain to see the windmills, and she would send them some postcards. She promised to call them every year on their birthday, and she would send them fabulous Christmas presents. They said she was crying when she left. Sarah never called me or notified me that she was leaving, but her parents showed up at the house the next week. They apologized again for what Sarah did, but did not attempt to defend her or justify her actions. Jake and Liam were their only grandchildren, and they wanted to be able to see them. I had no trouble with their request. They said Katie was too ashamed to come see me. She was torn between her sister and her parents. 2 months later, my divorce was final. Jody and I went to Red Lobster to celebrate. It was a rare night out without the boys. They didn't seem to mind. In fact, I believe they were glad in a way. We spent the night at the local Holiday Inn. The twins were excited when I got home at 10 the next morning. They didn't say anything but spent the whole day grinning from ear to ear. A year later, the business was doing great, but unfortunately, Dad passed away. Mom expressed an interest in moving to Florida with her sister, but didn't want to leave the boys. The twins felt that Grandma should go. They carefully explained to me that Jody could take her place, even though she couldn't cook as well as my mom. They also insisted that they were old enough for separate rooms. It was an obvious plan and a good one. The boys got birthday cards from their mother, but no phone call. She also sent lots of postcards. All the postcards had Spanish windmills on them. I wasn't sure what the significance of that was. She sent them 2 fancy embroidered dresses for Christmas, but hadn't anticipated the growth spurt that young boys reaching their teen years go through. Neither of them seemed disappointed that the dresses were too small. Parker Engineering became our biggest client. Tom was glad to learn that Calvin was now teaching electronics at the Lebanon County Vocational School, a big come-down from his previous position. He was no longer married. Laura remarried and moved to California. Ken Sanders did not last 6 months at his new job. He was now working in the States, but nobody seemed to know where. Tom had contacted his high school alumni association to see if he could find out. My best friend always felt that I let Ken off too easy. The odd thing was that the boys were still getting postcards with the windmills on them. There was never any information on the cards, just generic sentiments. David told me that Sarah called them several times. She was working for a travel agency in Barcelona. She never mentioned Ken or gave them any information about what had happened between them. Jody and I took a quick trip to Maryland for a quiet marriage. Within a year, she was expecting. Jake and Liam were as excited as we were. They were looking forward to having a little goth girl for a sister. I believe that was some sort of private joke between the boys and their new mom. They never let me in on it. Thanks for watching this gripping tale of betrayal and heartbreak. How would you handle discovering your spouse's double life? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories.